we're talking powers and becomes action. That was the voice of the late, great Joe Madison. And we are acknowledging that this is the 1 year anniversary since his transition into the ancestral realm. This is weird. I'm back on YouTube Live. We've never done 2 lives in a day. So we'll see how this goes. I don't even know if people are still like driving to work or can watch this right now. So we're here. Hi. So Urban View, I wanted to talk with you yesterday about not just I should say, I wanted to talk to you today, not just about what we discussed yesterday. Yesterday, we talked a lot about the attacks and the effort to blame DEI for the crash, the terrible crash that took place yesterday. We talked about the fact that, they had just before this crash, they had gotten rid of the FAA director. We're going to talk about why. We spoke about the fact that they had just let go hundreds of aviation experts and air traffic controllers were already understaffed. And there was a lot of fear after the result of the 200 executive orders that Donald Trump signed, one of which or several of which impacted the FAA. Offered buyouts to people in a portion of the industry that we can't afford to have buyouts. We're getting reports now that in the state of California, there are a number of air traffic control towers that have no air traffic controllers because the air traffic controllers, their job function was outsourced to a third-party agency, no longer government, to save money because it's efficient. Thank you, Doge. Not that Doge did this, but this is the sort of program that they're promoting. And basically, there are some towers that have no air traffic controllers. And we talked about that extensively before Donald Trump's press conference. And when Donald Trump did the press conference, everything I said was going to happen happened. He lied, he was racist, he was doing all the things. And then I saw the news spend a lot of the day talking about the racism that was in Donald Trump's press conference, where he says things like, of course, DEI was a reason for the crash. And I know this because I have common sense. No, you don't. That you definitely do not have. You understand how to manipulate. Common sense you do not have. I want us to be reminded in the spirit of Joe Madison, who always said, put it where the goats can get it. I want us to be reminded of the phrase from Toni Morrison, the quote where she says that the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, so you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head ain't shaped right, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says you have no kingdoms, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary because there will always be one more thing. And we're in that part of the reality in Project 2025 America right now. We're in the distraction part because while everyone was talking about the racism coming from the racist in chief, everybody was talking about that, we were talking less about the confirmation hearings that have been taking place this week. And so if all we do is pay attention to the racist words spoken by racist people, we miss the real stories. And the real story is that they are putting the worst WEI hires in charge of the country and into positions of leadership. For those of you new to the conversation, I did not stutter when I said WEI. I meant WEI. DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, was a policy program that was necessary because of white people's heretofore uninterrupted commitment to exclude anybody else who wasn't white from even being considered. They played a game. They rigged the game such that they were the only ones who could compete. They said that they were the best of the best. Meanwhile, they had excluded 90% of the rest of the world from ever competing. But in their minds, because white nationalism is a sickness, I don't want to call it a mental illness, but it certainly is given mental sick. They believe that they are the best simply because they said so. We've unpacked how racism ain't really a thing in the podcast that's going to be launching later in a couple of weeks. I have a whole episode talking about white supremacy, what it is and how it operates. That'll be coming later. But I want us to talk about what we also did not get a chance to address yesterday because it's going to matter for all of the other leadership decisions that are coming down the pike. We learned over the course of the past several days that elongated muskrat, the buddy in chief, had pushed out the head of the Federal Aviation Agency, the FAA. And we didn't necessarily know why, but we knew it had something to do with a fine. And we weren't quite sure what it was. Now we know what it was. The FAA, the Federal Aviation Agency, fined Elon Musk and SpaceX and grounded them. Said, you can't fly no more. Why did they do that? Do you remember a couple of weeks ago when elongated muskrat launched a demonstration rocket where he was trying to get to outer space, one of his rich boy toy things, and it exploded in the air, and it sent streams of debris, trash, that very dangerous trash that was flying, hurtling through the air at explosion rates of propulsion that were landing throughout the Caribbean, landing on the people in the Turks and Caicos. So much debris that airplanes had to alter their flight routes to avoid getting struck upside the wing because of elongated muskrat's bad job of trying to get a rocket into the air and back down without destroying anything. He destroyed a lot of things. Because of that, and because no one seemed to understand why that rocket exploded, the FAA was like, hey, man, you can't fly no more. You got to tell us what happened here. And they grounded SpaceX. Elongated muskrat got busy doing what elongated muskrats do, and he basically forced the head of FAA, who was supposed to have a 5-year term, was in the first of their 5-year terms, was supposed to have a 5-year term, forced that person to resign, who is a white man, by the way, not a DEI hire, who forced that person to resign the day that Donald Trump is getting inaugurated, because he wants SpaceX to be able to do whatever the fuck he wants it to do, right? Yesterday, Donald Trump talked about how we want the most competent people. And so, as Jared Ryan Sears said on the Twitters, Donald Trump says, we want the most competent people. Then Donald Trump picks a drunkard white Christian nationalist to head the military, a Russian sympathizer connected to a brutal dictator who is a member of a cult to head up intelligence, an anti-vaxxer, conspiracy theorist with a brainworm who likes to drive around with roadkill to head the HHS, a puppy killer and a goat executioner who released a book full of lies to head up the Homeland Security, the owner of the WWE with an ongoing legal case and decades of accusations involving overlooking sexual abuse of underage boys to head up the Department of Education, and a former Real World Road Rules and Fox Business personality to head up transportation, who literally at the press conference where he got a chance to speak said to all of us who apparently did not know that it is not standard to have aircraft collide. I want to be clear on that. Duh. We know it's not standard for aircraft to collide. That's why it's called a tragedy. It's a disaster. It's a thing. It hasn't happened in decades. In fact, it didn't happen until y'all got rid of all the DEI. I want to unpack some of these picks because I need y'all to take on a homework assignment, a power work assignment. For those of you who are new to the show, we do power work assignments here. And those are assignments where we hear about an issue and then we activate on our power. We hear about an issue, we activate on our power. Let's go through some of these picks. Some of them have already been placed into positions, but others we have the ability to activate on. The drunkard white Christian nationalist to head up the military. That's a done deal. That was Pete Hegseth. His own mama calls him Trash Hegseth. This is the man who got kicked out of 2 nonprofit organizations that he helped to start because he was fugazi with the money. This is a man who had so many allegations of abusing former wives and past wives and present wives and girlfriends of wives and all these things that he had to have his second wife had to have safe words so her family would know to come get her because he was so violent and so dangerous, and has been accused of sexual assault and paid $50,000 to a woman to get her to sign an NDA to no longer talk about the sexual assault allegations that she had. Now, his only qualifications for this job to lead up the military, what was it? Oh, he led a platoon. And he was a Fox News host. Now, the black man he replaced, Lord Austin, was more qualified for this position than the Archangel of Gabriel, who was the leader of the warrior of the heavenly host. And Lord Austin, as a black man, led entire wars. His bio is so long, it would take me 15 minutes to read you all the things that he did, but he was black. And Pete Hegseth is white. So that qualifies Pete Hegseth in the minds of white nationalists. Then we have Tulsi Gabbard. This is one you can activate on. Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian sympathizer connected to a brutal dictator who's also a member of a cult who is being nominated to head up intelligence. According to the headlines, Trump's pick, Tulsi Gabbard, to become the nation's intelligence chief, faced scrutiny for her views on surveillance practices, which have historically been misused against marginalized communities. She's also a dictator groupie. She ain't met a dictator she don't like. And yes, that part about her being in a cult, that's also true. So this is a power work moment. I need y'all to call your senators. You have 2 of them. The senators, there are 2 senators for every state, and there are 100 senators altogether. They need votes to confirm these people into office. Right now, the Republicans have 53 of those senators. The Democrats have the balance. And so they need a number of Republicans to not vote for these people. And that's only going to happen if people call them and demand that your senator say no on these votes. Then we get to RFK. This is another one where your power work can come into play. RFK is an anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist with a brainworm who likes to ride around with roadkill. That's who Jared was talking about in that tweet when he said it. Now, let's be clear. Some of y'all may have heard that RFK Jr. believes that black people are super Negroes. And as a result, we don't need the same vaccines that the white people need. Now, he ain't got no scientific background at all. He is a lawyer. I'm telling you, we don't do medical school studies in law school. He has no medical background whatsoever. He has also said he often is confused and believes misinformation online. He is, well, let's just give you a sense as to his choices that he's made throughout his life. We know about the dead baby bear. The dead baby bear, he says he came upon some roadkill. It was a dead baby bear. So he's like, oh, look at that dead baby bear in the middle of the road. So he picks up the dead baby bear, puts the dead baby bear in his car, and then proceeds to go to other meetings because he was planning to take the dead baby bear home, skin the dead baby bear, and eat the dead baby bear. I ain't mad at a hunter who gonna hunt and find a bear, or if you find roadkill and you think it's okay to pick it up off the road, if that's you, that's you. I'm mad at it. Scavengers and Neanderthal and cave-like things, that happens. It's part of that legacy. But he took the dead baby bear, put it in the car, went to a bunch of meetings with the rotting carcass of the dead baby bear in his car, then realizes, oh snap, I have a dinner event at Peter Luger's in Brooklyn. This is a real story, but I got this dead baby bear in my car. He drives to Central Park, drops off the dead baby bear in Central Park. We don't have bears in Central Park, but then he put like a bike up on it to make it look like it was a bike accident that killed the dead baby bear, which had been killed by roadkill earlier in the day at another location that he forgot about. And so he then goes to eat steak at Peter Luger, and it costs the city of New York money. Like NYPD had to investigate. Like it was an issue when this all happened. That's the dead baby bear. But then it's the dead whale head. You may not have heard about this one. He hears that a dead whale has beached at the beach. So he puts his kids in the car, goes down to the beach, cuts off the whale's head, straps it to the roof of the car, gives his children in the car plastic bags to put on their head, because as they was driving home, he didn't want the whale juices from the dead whale head to drip onto their faces. He, according to his sister, used to put chickens and live animals in the blenders to blend them up. This is a sick man. He is also one who has been incredibly accused of helping to spread so much vaccine misinformation in islands like Samoa. And in Samoa, they had a terrible, tragic incident where the way their measles vaccine was supposed to be prepared, 2 nurses prepared it erroneously, and 2 people died. Tragic, absolutely terrible. But you heard what I said. The nurses mistakenly combined things to give the vaccine that they weren't, so they didn't follow the directions. RFK shows up at the behest of anti-vaxxing organizations and spreads so much anti-vax misinformation that the vaccination rates from a preventable disease plummeted. Over 80 people died. And this wasn't like in the 1900s. This was in 2018. 2018. Call your senators and tell them, hell no, what? No, this man should not be in charge of HHS. He's also the man who kept a diary of all of his infidelities, a diary where he rates all the women that he had sexual intercourse or any sort of affairs with. His wife, one of his wives, finds the diary and realizes that not only is he tracking all the women he's cheating on her with, he's rating them. He's got a number-coded system to talk about what he has engaged in with these people. Some of them, multiple people in one day. And that wife who found that diary subsequently took her own life. Do with that information what you will. May she rest in peace. Call your senators. Then we got the puppy and goat executioner, Kristi Noem, who's already now in charge of Homeland Security. I want y'all to be mindful. This is a woman who has been banned from showing up on the tribal lands of any of the tribes in her state. And in her state, tribal lands made up over 12% of the geography of the state. And she was banned because she is so terrible and offensive at what she does. And now you will see her often on Fox News in a uniform with a full face beat. Honey, her makeup to the gods, okay? Acting like cosplaying warrior. And then one you will be able to take action on. So we've got RFK Jr. that you can call your senators about. We've got Tulsi Gabbard that you can call your senators about. When it comes to education, we got the owner of WWE, one of the owners, Linda McMahon, who has also been accused of lying about her own education background, claiming she had degrees that she ain't had. These are all white people, by the way. I just feel like it needs to be said because we keep assuming that people who are fraudulent and get access to positions are not white. These are all white people. These are all white people. And Linda McMahon, who has no background in determining in helping to run a federal education system, she is named in a lawsuit because even though she's the president-elect's pick for the Secretary of Education, she's been accused of enabling the sexual abuse by former ringside announcers at the wrestling company that she is a part of. She has been accused of allowing and enabling sexual assault against young boys as young as 13 to go unchecked. And that lawsuit was actively moving forward until she got named as the Department of Secretary of Education pick. And all of a sudden, the lawsuit has been paused. You can call your senators and you can say, hey, Vote no. If you don't vote no, we are going to run someone against you. We are going to show up at your office. We're not just going to call you once. We're going to get all of our friends to call you. We're going to show up at your office. We're going to send you letters. We're going to email you. We're going to do the things of civic engagement. A lot of you don't know what civic engagement looks like. We're going to talk about that throughout the month of February. Don't worry. I got you. We're going to have this together. These are action steps that you can take. Then we got Sean Duffy, who is a real world road rules Fox business personality, who's now in charge of transportation, who again is the person who told us, as in the tradition of Captain Obvious, that it is not standard for planes to crash. You think? You genius? Sean Duffy, his credentials include hosting a Fox News weekend show and being a part of Real World and Road Rules. He also served for a short time as a congressman. And while he was a congressman, do you want to know what he voted to do? This person who is now in charge of the Department of Transportation, when he was in Congress, he voted to defund the FAA. I shit you not. I shit you not. The power work assignment for all of us is to call our senators. Now, those of you who are new to civic engagement, you may not realize that civic engagement actually works. And when we organize and we do the work together, we can make a huge difference. That's why a few days ago, when I called the White House comment line and they weren't taking any comments, I was like, what the hell? Like that's an advocacy point. It's an advocacy pressure point. And now we have an opportunity to activate on our power and to advocate so that the people who have not yet been confirmed don't get confirmed. If you get a chance to watch the hearings, I encourage you to watch the hearings. They're terrible. It's awful. It's a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad cabinet, which makes sense when you think about the distraction of racism. They want us focusing on DEI, as if DEI means something negative, when the reality is every accusation is projection. Every accusation is projection. DEI, I'll say it once, I'll say it again, was only necessary because white people collectively refused to allow anybody who wasn't white access to anything. That is a sickness. I'm going to need our righteous and white people in the audience. Y'all got to work on that because that's a sickness. Is something really wrong with the mindset that thinks that that's okay. But when they make accusations about DEI, I need us to ask ourselves, what is it that's really happening here? Because they're accusing DEI of being unqualified. And I just read you all the qualifications and the controversial backgrounds of the white nominees for these positions. White, entitled, and ineptly incompetent. That's the other acronym we need to be using, WEI. WEI is what happens when white people tell themselves that they are the best simply because they're white, and then they don't need any other qualifications. They're mediocre, substandard, and subpar, not because I said that they are, but because we looked at their evaluations. We looked at their qualifications. We looked at what they bring to the table. They are inept. They are unqualified. They don't have the range. They ain't got the skills. They ain't got the language. They ain't got the background. They ain't got the credentials. They ain't even got the reputation of being good at these things. They suck bigly, hugely. They're terrible, awful, not good at their jobs, not qualified to sit in those positions. And I hope that at some point, our white listeners will be able to really do some inquiry about what it says to everybody else. When we see your community, not all of you, but as a group, your community, embracing mediocrity, rejecting standards of excellence, simply because for you, whiteness justifies everything. Now, for the rest of us, we looking at y'all like y'all ain't qualified. You can't do this work and you can't do it well. I need white America, white people broadly, to ask yourself, if you really were that superior, if you really were that great, why is it that you make it so that you're the only ones you compete against? A pool of mediocrity competing against other mediocre people. And we have to call it mediocrity because the reality is if you weren't mediocre and if you weren't celebrating a culture of mediocrity, you would never think to put up barriers to prevent other people from having to participate, from being able to compete. That's when you could really prove your merit and your mettle and your value as a good white. The reality is you're a human being like everybody else. There's no one race that's better than the others. However, socially, culturally, if you create a system where you cheat all the time and all the rest of us see you cheating in real time, and we see the negative impacts of you cheating, the only minds you're great in are your own. The rest of us are laughing at you, and we're gonna have to navigate around you because you also got guns. But the rest of us are laughing at you. It's ridiculous. There's no qualifications here. And now we have a power work assignment so that we can activate on what we can do to make sure that the worst of the worst aren't the ones who are going to be in charge of running the country. All right, YouTube, this is our second YouTube. We appreciate you. A second YouTube in a day. I don't know if we're ever going to do this again. I got to evaluate how it went. We'll think about it, but probably not will be the answer. We just had to do it today because we had to have our moment of gratitude with our libation. And so I wanted to open that up for all of you to participate into. But we're going to get ready to head into commercial break. Appreciate you, YouTube. We love y'all. But Urban View, before we do, I just want to remind